Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrew Linkson, and I'm presenting my EuroGP paper called Mining Feature Relationships in Data. Okay, so what is the motivation for this paper? It comes back to this whole idea of associational mining. So if you've ever heard of associational mining, it's this idea that we can find relationships between features in data based on analysing which features appear more often together. So the classic example, which is well known by a lot of people, is this idea that beers and darters or nappies and beers are often bought together. And so if you have your data set here with your list of items that your customers are purchasing, you might learn that darters and beers are purchased often together, and therefore in your supermarket you'll put them next to each other, or you'll do a, buy a six-pack and you get a free lot of diapers or something. But I sort of have an inherent problem with associational mining or a criticism of it, which is that it doesn't really take into account that a lot of relationships in data are actually symbolic in nature. So if you think about the classic to doctor, they talk about your BMI, that's your weight divided by the square of your height. That's a symbolic relationship. And if you try to capture that with associational mining, then first of all, it's continuous data, so you'd have to do some sort of binning or something, and then you wouldn't really get the full usefulness of understanding the relationship very well, because it's not giving you that symbolic structure. That's a more topical one is house prices. House prices is based on various properties of a house, how many bedrooms you have, the bathroom, the land area, and so on. And so a formula like this that compares different features in data set is a lot more useful than just saying that high bedrooms and high bathrooms appear together, for example. You can get more information if you can find a symbolic format of them. So what methods do we know that's really good at finding symbolic relationships? GP, right? So GP, we love it for its symbolic nature. We can make cute little trees like this that take features, combine them and give you an output. So can we use this idea to find feature relationships as well? So can we do like a symbolic form of associational mining with GP? And that's the whole big idea of this paper. Can we do this in a supervised manner? You can see here that these four different functions here in this paper here are all giving you slightly different, quite different relationships, and these are all relationships you might actually find in real data. So, like a good academic, I made a nice acronym for this method called GP for feature relationship mining, GPFRM. I say feature relationships distinguish it from associational mining because it's quite a different idea. So what do we actually want to do? Well, we want to find a set of diverse feature relationships, representing them as trees. So in a data set, you'll often have more than one feature relationship. For example, this would be a BMI one again, but we could have another tree that was a different relationship within, say, your medical records. And the way that we model it is that we have our inputs to our tree, and then want our output to correspond to a different feature in our data set. So in this case, the two features, weight and height, correspond to BMI, which would be a feature in a data set. And by automatically finding these trees and matching them up to other features, we can then learn these relationships. And yeah, for hopefully obvious reasons, we don't want the inputs of our tree to be the same as the outputs, because it's a nice linear relationship. Saying that height is equal to height is perfectly true, but also not that informative. So how do we create these diverse feature relationships? Speciation. So if you've looked at niching or heard of species in EC before, it's that same kind of idea. And you can think of it as in terms of that, basically cluster our trees according to which target feature they correspond to. So this might be all the trees that produce an output which is very similar to BMI. And this might be all the trees that produce an output which is very similar to somebody's age or something like that. And so I use this term called target feature to mean a feature that best matches the output of the tree. Right? So if we have a bunch of inputs to our tree, like this, then our target feature will be BMI about output of the tree versus the feature values for BMI. And we also limit the number of species. So the reason to do that is that if you don't, you just get a bunch of really weak relationships, whereas you want fewer, more stronger ones. So how do we actually find these target features? How do we calculate the fitness? We use absolute distance correlation. So if you have the output of a tree, you can compare it to each of the features in your data set and find which one it's most similar to. We use Pearson's for a few reasons. Firstly, it's scale invariant. So if I'm trying to find a relationship in data, I don't necessarily care if it's got a big coefficient in front of it. Having a 10 times relationship versus a 1 times when they're both linear still kind of tells me totally the same. And you can always look at the scale afterwards anyway. We use absolute to make it invariant to directionality, so negative and positive relationships should be treated equally. They tell you the same sort of thing. Common interpretability standpoint, I argue. And also it's bounded between 0 and 1, which is really nice because you can say if it's got a low or a high correlation, that actually means something, It's bounded, you can say how strong it is. One other important component is that we have parsimony pressure. So if we're going to find these feature relationships, we want to be able to understand them, we want small trees. There's no point creating a really complex and accurate tree if we can't actually see what it's doing. Big trees are not interpretable. I hope no one will argue with that. And so we have a tree size as a small penalty to our fitness. So basically our fitness will have a little plus term with some weighting based on the tree size. So it's the simplest way to sort of make smaller trees. We had a bunch of experiments, which I won't go through here because they take more than 10 minutes, but 8 real world data sets, they parsimony pressure and so on. It's all the experiments in the full paper, but for this presentation, I think it's more useful to look at some of the evolved rules, or let's probably say relationships, see what we've actually found. And can GP find useful information? So the first one is the good old line data set. Which produced, one of the trees produced by it was this one here. It has a cost of 0.098, which is basically minimizing the cost means it's about 0.9 Pearsons, which is a pretty high correlation. And if you just dig into this a little bit further, this is the actual relationship that's found. So flavonoids is a minimum of total phenols times hue and proanthocyanins. What does it actually mean? Well, this thing here affects the colour of the wine, and then each of these things also have an effect on colour or correspond to different properties of wine that might affect colour. So phenols affect your taste, colour, and mouthfeel. Hue is just colour. And this is quite an interesting one. This is, I'm going to try and say it again, but it's only in red wine. And so when you're taking the minimum, if this is in red wine, it's going to tell you something about it. So that's just one example. Of course, with the speciation approach, you get a whole bunch of different relationships that can give you different information. And you get sort of, right, this is the sort of general structure of the trees you get, quite small, using only a few features and rather low. So like this one, we dermatology does it, only uses 4 distinct features and cost is very optimal. And then on the steel plates bulk data set, we're using only 2 features, 2 unique features, and getting perfect cost. So you found a perfect relationship from data. So in conclusion, we found a way to automatically discover non-trivial and diverse and volatile feature related data. Non-trivial in that I didn't show it here at the time, but we prevent linear relationships from being generated. These are small enough to be interpretable, but still in strong relationships, low cost. Future work, lots of things, right? Different ways of measuring interpretability, better ways of speciation, a more objective approach where you have parsimony pressure versus cost and so on. Thank you.